Captain Jake Miller sat in his command chair on the bridge of the Pioneer's Edge. The ship had been flying through empty space for 3 weeks now. They were far from Earth, checking old star systems that nobody had visited before. Jake liked these quiet missions. His crew was good, and space was peaceful out here. The bridge was small but clean. Lisa Garcia sat at her station, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. She wore headphones and watched her screens carefully. Pete Rodriguez was down in the engine room, making sure everything worked right. Dr. Amy Foster was in her lab, studying rock samples from the last planet they visited. Jake was drinking coffee when Lisa suddenly sat up straight. She pulled off her headphones and turned to look at him. Her face was white with shock. "Captain," she said in a quiet voice, "I'm getting something strange." Jake put down his coffee cup. "What kind of strange?" Lisa's hands shook as she worked her controls. "It's a signal, sir, but it's not from any human ship." The bridge went completely silent. Jake felt his heart start beating faster. In all the years humans had been flying through space, they had never found any other life. Scientists said it was possible, but nobody really believed it would happen. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded. "Yes, sir. The signal pattern is totally different from anything we use, and Captain..." She paused and looked at him again. "I think it's a distress call." Jake stood up quickly. "Tony, get down here now," he called to the pilot. "Pete, drop what you're doing and come to the bridge. Amy, same for you." Within minutes, his whole crew was crowded around Lisa's station. Tony Clark looked confused. Pete wiped grease off his hands with a dirty cloth. Dr. Foster carried a tablet computer and looked very excited. "Play it," Jake said. Lisa pressed a button. Strange sounds filled the bridge. It was not like human speech at all. The voice was high and musical, but underneath it, Jake could hear something else. Fear, pain, desperation. "My God," Dr. Foster whispered. "This is really happening." The signal played for 30 seconds, then repeated. Even though they could not understand the words, the meaning was clear. Someone was in trouble. Someone was asking for help. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her instruments. "About 6 light years from here. The signal is old, though. It took time to reach us." Pete scratched his head. "Could be a trap. Maybe someone is trying to trick us." "Who would do that?" Tony asked. "There's nobody else out here." "There is now," Dr. Foster said. She was already working on her tablet. "This changes everything. We're not alone in the universe." Jake walked to the front window and looked out at the stars. For his whole life, those stars had been empty and cold. Now he knew that somewhere out there, someone else was looking back. Someone who needed help. "Can you figure out what they're saying?" he asked Dr. Foster. "I can try. Give me some time to study the signal patterns." Jake turned back to his crew. "Lisa, keep listening. See if you can find any more signals." "Pete, how long would it take us to get there?" Pete thought for a moment. 6 light years, with our jump drive. Maybe 2 days. "That's if we're going," Tony said. "Are we really thinking about this?" "We don't know anything about these aliens. They could be dangerous. They're asking for help," Jake said simply. "We should call Earth first," Lisa suggested. "Tell them what we found." Jake knew she was right. This was the biggest discovery in human history. Earth needed to know. But he also knew what would happen. The message would take weeks to reach Earth. Then Earth would send scientists and diplomats and military ships. By the time anyone got here, whoever was calling for help would probably be dead. "Amy," he called. "How long do you need?" Dr. Foster was already deep in her work. The language structure is completely different from human speech. But distress, calls follow patterns. Give me 12 hours and I might have something. Jake made his decision. "Lisa, send a message to Earth. Tell them we found aliens and we're going to help them. Include a copy of the signal." "Sir?" Tony said carefully. "Are you sure about this? We're not a military ship. We don't have weapons." Jake looked at his pilot. Tony was a good man, but he worried too much. "We're explorers. This is what we came Out here to do. Pete nodded. The captain's right. Besides, if they wanted to hurt us, they wouldn't be calling for help. Unless it's a trap, Tony said again. Then we'll be careful, Jake replied. But we're going. Lisa worked at her station for a few minutes, then looked up. Message sent to Earth, sir. They'll get it in about 3 weeks. Good. Amy, you have until tomorrow morning. Pete, start getting the ship ready for a long jump. Tony, plot a course to the signal's location. As his crew scattered to their tasks, Jake stayed at the front window. He thought about Earth, so far away. He thought about his family back home. His sister would worry when she heard what he was doing. His parents would be proud, but scared. But mostly, he thought about that voice in the signal. Someone out there was in trouble. Someone was calling for help across the empty darkness of space, and somehow humans had heard them. Jake had always believed that if you could help someone, you should. It did not matter if they were human or alien. It did not matter if it was dangerous. When someone called for help, good people answered. Tomorrow, they would jump into the unknown. They would meet aliens for the first time in human history. They had no idea what they would find. But Jake knew one thing for certain. They were going to help. The Pioneer's Edge dropped out of hyperspace near a small star system. Jake Miller looked out at space and felt his stomach drop. Dozens of alien ships floated in the darkness ahead. They were huge and black, shaped like sharp triangles. Between them, 3 smaller ships drifted helplessly. These smaller ships were beautiful, made of something that looked like crystal and silver. My God, Tony whispered from his pilot seat. Look at the size of those things. Lisa was busy at her station. Captain, I'm getting signals from both groups. The smaller ships are still sending distress calls. The big ships are... I think they're talking to each other. Dr. Foster had spent all night working on the alien language. She looked tired but excited. I've learned some basic words from the distress signal. The small ships call themselves Veltar. They're asking for help. They say they're being held prisoner. Jake studied the scene through the front window. The big black ships had clearly captured the smaller ones. This was exactly what he had feared they would find. Can you talk to them? He asked Dr. Foster. I can try some basic words. But Captain, I don't think we should talk to the big ships first. They look like warships. Before Jake could answer, Lisa spoke up. Sir, one of the big ships is sending us a message. They want to talk. Jake took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first conversation with aliens. Put them on screen. The main display flickered, then showed the inside of an alien ship. The creature looking back at them was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were completely black. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. Unknown vessel, the alien said in perfect English. You will identify yourself immediately. Jake was surprised that it spoke English, but he tried not to show it. This is Captain Jake Miller of the human ship Pioneer's Edge. We received a distress call and came to help. The alien's black eyes seemed to study Jake carefully. Human, it said slowly. From which world do you come? Earth. Sol system, 3rd planet. The alien's face changed completely. Its eyes went wide and it stepped back from the screen. Jake heard other aliens talking excitedly in the background. Did you say Sol 3? The alien asked in a different voice. Yes. We call it Earth. The alien was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, it sounded much more careful. I am Commander Zalthek of the Kithera Dominion. Sol 3 is listed in our records as a Class 12 death world. This is not possible. What's a death world? Jake asked. Zalthek seemed confused by the question. A planet so dangerous that no intelligent life should be able to survive there. Sol 3 has extreme weather, deadly creatures, toxic plants, natural disasters, and constant warfare. Our scientists say it is one of the most lethal worlds in the galaxy. Jake looked at his crew. They all seemed as confused as he felt. Earth isn't that bad, he said. You fight wars constantly, Zalthek said. Your planet has storms that destroy cities, earthquakes that crack the ground open, Animals that hunt and kill for food. Plants that can poison you. How do you survive? We just do, Jake replied. It's our home. Zaltek stared at him for a long time. Deathworlders, he whispered. We did not know any still lived. Commander, Jake said, trying to get back to the important matter. What about those ships you're holding? They called for help. Zaltek's manner changed again. He stood up straighter and his voice became cold. The Veltar are now property of the Kithara Dominion. They will be taken to our worlds to work. You will leave this system immediately. We can't do that, Jake said simply. You refuse? Zaltek looked shocked. We have 40 warships. You have one small vessel. The Veltar asked for help. We came to help them. This is foolish. You cannot fight us. Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about what the alien had said about Earth being a death world. Maybe that meant something important. Commander Zaltek, he said finally, you said we're from a death world. You seem afraid of that. Why? Zaltek did not answer right away. Death world species are unpredictable, dangerous. They do not think like civilized beings. What if we made a deal? Jake suggested. Let us talk to the Veltar. If we can work something out, maybe nobody has to fight. There is nothing to discuss. Leave now, or we will destroy your ship. Jake looked at his crew again. Tony looked scared but determined. Pete was angry. Lisa was working at her station. Dr. Foster was still trying to understand the conversation. Give us 1 hour, Jake said. Let us talk to the Veltar. Then we'll give you our answer. Zaltek thought about this. 1 hour, then you leave or you die. The screen went dark. Captain, Lisa said immediately. I'm getting a signal from one of the small ships. They want to talk to us. Put them through. The screen lit up again, but this time it showed a completely different kind of alien. This one was beautiful, with pale blue skin and large silver eyes. It moved like water, graceful and smooth. When it spoke, its voice was like music. Greetings, brave ones, it said. I am Silandra of the Veltar. We heard your conversation with the Kithara. You truly came to help us? Yes, Jake said. We heard your distress call. Silandra's silver eyes filled with something that looked like tears. We have been prisoners for many days. The Kithara attack peaceful ships and take us as slaves. We cannot fight them. We do not know how. Why not? Dr. Foster asked. We are from a gentle world. We do not understand violence or war. The Kithara come from worlds like ours, but they learn to be cruel. They have built a great empire by taking others as slaves. Jake felt anger building in his chest. What about other aliens? Don't they help? There is a coalition of worlds that opposes the Kithara, Silandra explained. But we are all from peaceful planets. We try to fight, but we are not good at it. The Kithara always win. Until now, Pete said quietly. Silandra looked confused. You said you are from Sol 3. The Kithara seemed frightened of this. They called it a death world, Jake explained. Silandra's eyes went even wider. Deathworlders are real? We thought they were just stories. Legends say that some species come from worlds so harsh that they become incredibly strong and dangerous, but also that they can choose to protect others instead of hurt them. Dr. Foster leaned forward. What do the legends say about Deathworlders? That they heal from injuries that would kill us, that they can fight many enemies at once, that they never give up even when they should, that they form bonds with their friends stronger than family, and that when they decide to protect someone, nothing can stop them. Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was staring at the screen with new understanding. Maybe humans were different from other aliens. Maybe coming from Earth had made them stronger in ways they never realized. Silandra, Jake said, if we help you escape, can you get word to this coalition of yours? Yes, but the Kithara have 40 ships. You cannot fight them all. Jake smiled for the first time since they had arrived. Maybe not, but we're not going to abandon you. He turned to Lisa. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we found aliens and some of them need help. Tell them to send everyone." "Sir?" Lisa asked. "Every ship we have. Every weapon. Every soldier." Jake looked back at the screen where Silandra waited. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when someone threatens people under human protection. The message from the Pioneer's Edge reached Earth 3 weeks later. Admiral John Hayes was drinking his morning coffee when his aide rushed into his office with the report. John almost dropped his cup when he read it. "Get me the president," he said immediately, "and call an emergency meeting of the Defense Council." Within hours, every major leader on Earth knew the news. Aliens were real. Some of them were peaceful and needed help. Others were aggressive and took slaves. And somehow one human ship was all that stood between innocent aliens and their captors. The response was immediate and massive. Every nation on Earth began preparing ships for the journey. The space docks worked day and night. Weapons that had been stored for years were brought out and loaded onto ships. Soldiers who had never expected to fight in space began training for alien combat. Meanwhile, 6 light-years away, Jake Miller was fighting the most dangerous game of his life. The Kithera had given him 1 hour to leave. Instead, he had spent that hour rescuing Veltar prisoners. It had started when Dr. Foster figured out how to jam the Kithera communication systems. For 10 minutes, the big black ships could not talk to each other. In those 10 minutes, Tony Clark flew the Pioneer's Edge like it was a fighter plane instead of an exploration ship. They swooped in close to one of the Veltar ships. Pete Rodriguez used the ship's mining tools to cut through the locks that held the Veltar prisoner. In 5 minutes, they pulled 30 Veltar onto their ship before the Kithera could react. "How did you do that?" Silandra asked when she was safely on the human ship. "Your ship moved in ways that should be impossible." Tony grinned as he flew them away from angry Kithera ships. "I learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere, lots of wind, storms, and gravity. This is easy compared to flying through a hurricane." The Kithera ships chased them, but they were built for fighting other slow ships. Tony flew the Pioneer's Edge through an asteroid field like he was driving a car through city streets. The Kithera ships had to slow down or crash. The humans just kept going. "Your pilot has incredible reflexes," Silandra told Jake. "How is this possible?" Dr. Foster was busy studying the rescued Veltar, but she heard the question. "On Earth, if you don't have quick reflexes, you die. There are animals that hunt us, weather that can kill us. We had to become fast to survive." Silandra looked amazed. "You were hunted by other creatures?" "Still are in some places," Pete said from his engineering station. "Sharks, bears, poisonous snakes. Earth is full of things that want to eat us." "But that means you learn to fight them?" "We learned to fight everything," Jake said simply. The Pioneer's Edge reached safe distance from the Kithera fleet. Jake knew they could not stay hidden for long, but they had time to plan. The rescued Veltar told them about Kithera methods and weaknesses. Dr. Foster learned more of their language. Most importantly, they sent a message to the Coalition of Worlds. The message was simple. Deathworlders from Sol 3 had arrived. They were willing to fight the Kithera. The Coalition should send help. The response came back within hours. Coalition ships from 6 different worlds were coming. But they would take days to arrive, and they warned that they were not good fighters. "We have tried to fight the Kithera for many years," explained Admiral Korath of the Coalition fleet. "But we are farmers and scientists and artists. We do not know how to fight wars like the Kithera do." Jake understood. The Coalition species came from peaceful worlds. They had never needed to become warriors. But humans came from Earth, where everything was dangerous and life was a constant struggle. That night, while the ship hid in the shadow of a large asteroid, Jake talked with his crew about what they should do. "Earth is sending ships," Lisa reported, "but it will take weeks for them to get here." "The Coalition fleet will arrive in 3 days," Tony said, "but they admit they're not good fighters." "The Kithera have 40 ships," Pete pointed out. "Even if the Coalition brings 20 ships, we're still outnumbered." Jake looked at the Veltar refugees sleeping in their cargo bay. These aliens were so different from humans. They were beautiful and graceful, but they had never learned to fight. They trusted others to protect them. "We can't run," he said finally. If we leave, the Kithara will hunt down every Veltar ship in space. They'll probably attack the Coalition worlds too. So what do? Dr. Foster asked. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had decided to hunt. We teach the galaxy what humans are really like. Over the next 2 days, the Pioneer's Edge became something no one expected. Jake and his crew turned their exploration ship into a weapon. Pete Rodriguez took apart mining equipment and turned it into bombs. Tony Clark studied Kithara ship movements and found weaknesses in their formations. Dr. Foster worked with the Veltar to learn everything about Kithara technology, but most importantly, Jake began planning attacks that used human thinking instead of alien thinking. The Kithara fight like most civilized species, he explained to his crew. They line up their ships and shoot at each other until someone gives up. They follow rules and expect their enemies to do the same. What do we do instead? Pete asked. We fight like humans. We cheat. We lie. We attack when they don't expect it. We hit them where they're weak and run away before they can hit us back. That sounds dishonest, Silandra said. She had been listening to their plans. Jake looked at her seriously. Silandra, your people are peaceful and honest, that's beautiful. But the Kithara are using your honesty against you. They attack you because they know you won't fight back dirty. But if we fight like them, don't we become like them? No, Dr. Foster said. The difference is why we fight. They fight to take slaves. We fight to protect innocents. On the 3rd day, the Coalition fleet arrived. Jake talked to their commanders and saw immediately that Dr. Foster was right. These aliens were too civilized to be good warriors. They wanted to fight fair battles, with clear rules. Admiral Korath, Jake said during their strategy meeting, with respect, fair fights are what the Kithara want. They're bigger and stronger than you. In a fair fight, they always win. What do you suggest? Korath asked. Let us show you how Deathworlders fight. That night, Jake put his plan into action. The Pioneer's Edge attacked a single Kithara ship that was patrolling alone, but instead of fighting it directly, they disabled its engines and communications, then disappeared before help could arrive. The Kithara sent 3 ships to investigate. Jake's crew attacked all 3 at once, using the asteroid field for cover. They hit fast and hard, then vanished again. By morning, the Kithara had lost 6 ships and had no idea how many enemies they were fighting. Commander Zalthek was furious and confused. How many Deathworlder ships are there? He demanded during an angry message to Jake. Does it matter? Jake replied calmly. Show yourself and fight with honor. Jake almost laughed. Honor? You attack peaceful traders and take slaves. You want to lecture me about honor? The message ended, but Jake knew he had won something important. The Kithara were scared. For the first time in their history, they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. And tomorrow the real battle would begin. The space around the small star system suddenly filled with light, as dozens of human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral John Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, and looked out at the most important battle in human history. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we have 43 ships in formation. The Revenge, Freedom's Call, Defiance, and all the others are ready for battle. John nodded. He had brought every military ship Earth could spare, plus dozens of civilian ships that had been quickly armed for war. Every ship carried volunteers who had signed up to help aliens they had never met. Get me Captain Miller, John ordered. Jake's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. Behind him, John could see both human crew members and several of the rescued Veltar. Captain Miller, John said, this is Admiral Hayes, Earth Defense Command reporting for duty. Jake smiled for the first time in days. Glad to have you here, Admiral. The Kithara fleet is about 10 million kilometers away. They have 34 ships left after our attacks this week. Good work. What's the situation with our allies? The Coalition fleet has 22 ships. They're brave, but they don't know how to fight like we do. I suggest we take the lead. John looked at his tactical display. The Kithara fleet was moving toward them in a tight formation. They clearly expected a traditional space battle with ships lined up shooting at each other until one side retreated. All ships, John announced on the fleet communication channel, This is Admiral Hayes. Today we fight our first interstellar war. We're not fighting for conquest or resources. We're fighting to protect innocent people from slavery. Remember that and remember who we are. The human fleet began moving toward the enemy, but instead of forming a single battle line like the Kithera expected, they split into small groups. Each group had a different mission. Commander Ryan Steele led the fighter squadrons from the carrier ship Liberty. His pilots flew in formations that confused the Kithera completely. While alien ships moved in flat patterns, the human fighters attacked from above, below, and all angles at once. These Deathworlders fight in 3 dimensions. One Kithera pilot reported in panic. They attack like flying predators. The Kithera had never faced enemies that thought in 3 dimensions, because most alien worlds were peaceful, but Earth had flying creatures that hunted other flying creatures. Human pilots learned to think like hawks and eagles. Marine Colonel Beth Turner led boarding parties that jumped from ship to ship using small attack craft. When her Marines got inside Kithera ships, the aliens discovered that humans were much stronger and faster than they looked. "How can they move so quickly?" a Kithera soldier screamed before Beth's team captured his position. "How can they fight after being injured?" The answer was simple. Humans evolved on a world where being slow or weak meant death. They learned to keep fighting even when hurt. They learned to work together like pack hunters. On the main battlefield, Admiral Hayes used tactics that made no sense to alien minds. He sent small ships to attack big ones, then had the small ships run away when the big ships chased them. This split up the Kithera formation and made their ships easy targets for human heavy cruisers. Dr. Foster was on the Pioneer's Edge, working with Veltar engineers to understand captured Kithera technology. Pete Rodriguez took what she learned and began modifying coalition ships during the battle. "If we change this power coupling," Pete explained to a Veltar engineer, "your ship's weapons will be twice as strong. But the manual says that will cause the system to overload," the alien replied. "Earth manuals say that too. We ignore them when we need to." Pete's modifications turned slow coalition ships into effective weapons. For the first time in the war, coalition forces were winning battles against Kithera ships. But the most important change was not in technology. It was in attitude. The coalition aliens watched humans fight and began to understand something new. War was not about following rules or fighting fairly. War was about protecting the people you cared about. Admiral Koreth of the coalition fleet contacted Admiral Hayes during the battle. "Your people fight with such passion," he said. "How do you care so much about beings you just met?" "Because they asked for help," John replied simply. "That's all we need to know." As the battle continued, more coalition ships began fighting like humans. They stopped worrying about honor and started worrying about victory. They stopped fighting alone and started working together. Most importantly, they stopped being afraid of the Kithera. Commander Zalthek watched his fleet fall apart from the bridge of his command ship. Nothing was going the way it should. The Deathworlders fought like wild animals, but they were also incredibly smart. They coordinated their attacks perfectly while doing things that seemed impossible. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. 18, sir, and 12 more are badly damaged." Zalthek could not believe it. His fleet had ruled this part of space for decades. They had conquered dozens of worlds. Now they were being defeated by one small species from a planet most aliens thought was uninhabitable. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the Deathworlder Admiral is sending us a message." Admiral Hayes appeared on Zalthek's screen. The human looked calm and professional, but his eyes were hard as steel. "Commander Zalthek," John said, "this is your chance to surrender. Order your ships to stand down and release all prisoners." "Never," Zalthek snarled. "The Kithera Dominion does not surrender to inferior species." John's expression did not change. "We're not inferior. We're just different. We learned to fight on a world that tried to kill us every day. You learned to fight on easy worlds against weak enemies. You think your little fleet can defeat the entire Dominion? I think you're about to find out what happens when you threaten people under human protection." John cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Target their command ship, all batteries. The Indomitable and 3 other human ships fired at once. Zalthek's command ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the entire battlefield. With their commander dead, the remaining Kythera ships tried to retreat, but human fighters were faster and coalition ships blocked their escape routes. Within an hour, the entire Kythera fleet was either destroyed or captured. As the battle ended, Admiral Hayes received reports from across the battlefield. Human casualties were surprisingly light. Coalition losses were much lower than in any previous battle with the Kythera. Most importantly, they had freed hundreds of Veltar and other prisoners from the enemy ships. Jake Miller brought the Pioneers, Edge alongside the Indomitable. On his bridge, Silandra stood next to Dr. Foster, watching the rescue operations with tears in her silver eyes. "Is it over?" she asked. "This battle is over," Jake replied. "But the war is just beginning. There are Kythera fleets all over the galaxy. There are slave worlds that need to be liberated." Silandra looked at him with something like wonder. "And you will help free them all?" Jake looked out at the human fleet, then at the coalition ships that had fought beside them. For the first time in galactic history, the peaceful species had learned to fight back against their oppressors. "We'll help," he said. "But you don't need us to do it for you anymore. You've learned the most important lesson." "What lesson?" "That sometimes to protect innocent people, you have to be willing to fight for them." As rescue ships moved among the wreckage, Admiral Hayes began planning the next phase of the war. The Kythera Dominion had ruled through fear for too long. It was time for that to end. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders decided to protect their friends. 6 months after the first battle, Ambassador Carol Stone stood on the observation deck of the space station orbiting Earth. She watched alien ships from dozens of different species arriving and leaving every day. The sight still amazed her. Earth had become the unofficial capital of the free galaxy. What started as one small rescue mission had grown into the largest liberation movement in galactic history. The Kythera Dominion was gone, broken apart by combined human and coalition forces. Hundreds of worlds that had been slave planets were now free. Carol turned as footsteps approached behind her. Silandra walked up to join her at the window. The Veltar ambassador moved with her usual grace, but now she also carried herself with new confidence. "The morning briefing is ready," Silandra said. 17 more worlds reported full liberation yesterday. Carol smiled. "Good news. How are the integration programs going?" "Better than expected. The former slave species are learning quickly. Some are even asking to join the new defense force." This was the most surprising development of all. Species that had been enslaved for generations were now volunteering to help liberate other worlds. They had learned from watching humans that sometimes you had to fight to protect what mattered. Admiral Jake Miller entered the observation lounge, wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Defense Force. His promotion from captain had come after he liberated an entire star system single-handedly. Jake preferred his old job of exploring space, but he understood that the galaxy needed experienced leaders. "Morning briefing?" he asked. "Just finished," Carol replied. 17 worlds liberated, and the Kythera remnants are still retreating toward the outer rim. Jake nodded with satisfaction. "Any word from the deep space missions?" Captain Rodriguez reports that the mining colonies in the Arcturus sector are fully operational. Dr. Foster's cultural exchange program has 43 species participating. And Tony Clark just discovered 3 new star systems that want to join the coalition. Jake had to smile thinking about his old crew. Pete Rodriguez now commanded his own ship, helping former slave worlds rebuild their infrastructure. Dr. Foster ran the most successful alien cultural program in history. Tony Clark had returned to exploration, but now he led fleets of ships instead of flying alone. "What about Earth?" Jake asked. Carol's expression became more serious. "That's the interesting part. Earth's population is actually shrinking." This was true, and it worried some politicians back home. Millions of humans had volunteered to help with the liberation efforts. They served on ships, worked on freed worlds, and joined the exploration missions that were mapping the galaxy. Many of them decided to stay and help rebuild alien civilizations. Are people upset about that? Silandra asked. Some are, Carol admitted. They worry that humans are abandoning Earth. Jake shook his head. They don't understand. Humans aren't abandoning Earth. We're taking Earth with us wherever we go. This was exactly right. Human colonies were spreading across former Cathera territory, but they were not like the old Earth empires. These colonies existed to help and protect other species, not to conquer them. They built schools and hospitals alongside military bases. They shared technology instead of keeping it secret. The morning briefing was held in the main conference room. Representatives from 74 different species attended either in person or through video links. Carol still found it amazing to see so many different kinds of aliens working together. General Beth Turner gave the military report. The former Marine colonel now commanded the Defense Force ground units. Kythera resistance is almost finished, she announced. The last 3 strongholds should fall within the month. Admiral Hayes appeared on screen from his flagship, now permanently stationed in the Outer Rim. The remaining Kythera fleets are scattered and demoralized. Most are surrendering, without a fight when they see our ships. This was another surprise. Many Kythera soldiers had decided to join the new galaxy instead of fighting to the end. When they were offered the choice between prison and helping rebuild the worlds they had destroyed, most chose to help. Dr. Foster gave her report next. The cultural exchange programs are exceeding all expectations. We now have detailed information about over 200 different alien cultures. More importantly, they're learning about human culture and adopting the parts they find useful. Such as? Carol asked. Pack bonding is becoming popular among species that used to live alone. The concept of protecting strangers is spreading rapidly, and competitive sports are now played on 68 worlds. Jake laughed. Competitive sports? Apparently, most alien species never developed the idea of friendly competition. They find human games fascinating. Basketball is particularly popular among species with good jumping abilities. The briefing continued with reports from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were building their own governments. New trade routes connected species that had never met before. Scientific discoveries were being shared freely among all coalition members. But the most important change was harder to measure. The galaxy felt different now. Safer, more hopeful. After the briefing, Carol and Silandra walked to the diplomatic quarter of the station. This section housed embassies from every coalition species, plus several dozen worlds that were still deciding whether to join. Carol, Silandra said as they walked, may I ask you something personal? Of course. When your people first heard our distress call, why did you come? You didn't know us. You gained nothing by helping us. Your own leaders told you it was dangerous. Carol thought about this. It was a question many aliens asked, and humans sometimes had trouble explaining the answer. Because you asked for help, she said finally. On Earth, if someone calls for help, good people answer. It doesn't matter who they are or what it costs. But you could have been killed. Yes. But if we had ignored you, we would have had to live with that choice forever. Silandra stopped walking and looked at her. This is why the galaxy needed Deathworlders. Not because you are strong or fast or good at fighting, because you care about strangers. They reached the main embassy hall where a ceremony was taking place. The newest coalition member was being formally welcomed. It was a small world called Haven, settled by refugees from 12 different species. The planet had voted to join the coalition because they wanted to help protect other refugees. Ambassador Toral of Haven was making his speech. We join the coalition not for protection, but to offer protection to others. The humans taught us that the strong must defend the weak. We choose to be strong. Carol felt proud listening to this. This was what the war had really accomplished. Not just the defeat of the Kythera, but the creation of a galaxy where different species protected each other instead of fighting each other. After the ceremony, Carol returned to her office to find a message waiting from Earth. The president wanted her opinion on a proposal to establish permanent human colonies throughout the galaxy. She thought about Jake's words from the morning. Humans weren't abandoning Earth. They were taking Earth's values with them to the stars. Carol began typing her response. She recommended not just approving the colony proposal, but expanding it. The galaxy was a big place, and there were still many worlds that needed help. There were probably other aggressive species like the Kithera out there. There were certainly more peaceful species like the Veltar who might need protection someday. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars. They were not conquerors or explorers or traders. They were guardians. They were the ones who answered when someone called for help. As Carol finished her report, she looked out her office window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, on worlds she had never heard of, there might be other aliens in trouble, other species calling for help across the darkness of space. And when their calls reached human ears, she knew exactly what would happen. The Deathworlders would answer. They always did.